For those who are in the community, you already know this. We give internal awards. As you already know, we have Professor August Chair, who actually is the inventor of BPM, the father of many of the things that we actually work with. He has a lifetime award. That was before. That was given outside. But most of them we only give in the internal community because of certain developments, which we will have this evening. That's our internal things. Where we see something has been good developed, where framework has come forward, like the security reference framework that is just was presented. James is just coming with a mouthful. You did a great job, by the way. In this case, what we have here is something really fascinating. We look at the market, certain things happen at the market. Now we have worked, all of us, it doesn't matter if we are talking about the big organizations we have. You can go from Petronas to Cardinal Health to Harley Davidson to multiple of your organizations that are sitting here at the moment, Electrolux, Lego, etc. Every one of you, we do somewhere process improvements, we do BPM, we do optimizations. We do it at the level of the sub-layer of what we do, meaning the tasks. It's difficult to align on the top by goals, by objectives of what you want to do. Now, in an area where we have thought that, well, this is not where you would find it, we talked with the DoD, the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense of the government. They there, in the work that we work, we talked about data integrations, we talked about processes to applications, we talked about the integrations of enterprise architecture and BPM work. I mean, the usual things that we do in our community where we have reference content that they also say, how can we apply it? At the moment, we are furthermore, most of you know, in the process of helping them setting up an ERP competency center, or SPAYOR. In this context, we saw a program they were running, a framework they developed, which you actually see here in the back, Unity of Framework. It was so revelating to us. It was together with the Department of Homeland Security, lots of other, with the Northern Border Analysis, global Homeland Security aspects, the Department of State, multiple areas were involved in this. The DoD developed a program with these partners that literally looked at how can you find a program that unifies things? How can you look at joint knowledges? How can you look at joint doctrines? How can you look at things that where we have a same mission? Where we have same objectives. Now what really triggered us there is they have what we in private sector call an alignment framework. Where it doesn't matter which stakeholder it is, from any business unit, or the same business unit, or the same organizations, or the same departments, you can take a stakeholder, you can, based on their various objectives, find common things, align them, and find unity for potentials of working together or optimizing or improving things. Now this, I mean, it's a funny thing. If you will see this, we'll have a short presentation. If you will see it, when we saw it, we like, how could we not have thought in this way? It became so logical, it literally hits, you know, like some of the things where we have objects and objects that relates, where we said, well, it works again and again, each organization actually reinvents it, therefore we have developed reference content. It was the same thing that kind of hit us there. There's a common pattern there that they saw too, that they followed. Didn't matter if it was between Homeland Security or if it was aspects of the border services or if it was aspects of a DoD, if they would have, it could be different stakeholders, if they had common objectives or common other aspects you could find an alignment and unity. So with this, and we can already tell you, we will give them literally an award for the front runner of the year. This was so beyond of what was in the market that we saw, that we said, this time outside of the community, we will give this award. So I'm giving over to Ken, who will present some of it, and then we will get the team up. Well, they will get the award. So if we will have 15 minutes of Ken sharing a little bit with us, what were the things that they were doing? Thank you.
So a little bit of project background, and we spent last night, Mike and I and a couple of the others in the team, we spent last night translating what we learned the last couple of days from what we learned from leading practices. So really our project focus, which was our thinking, our way of thinking and our scope, it was a conceptual approach to coming and building a common framework for U.S. government entities within our project to deal with complex planning issues. So one of the big things for us was not to change other organizations' existing processes. Because if we have multiple departments and you try and make everybody do the exact same thing, it's really a non-starter for our government organization. Everybody, you lose stakeholders at that point. And I'm sure that's not unique to any organization. So it kind of applies to all of us. Now, why we did this project? Within Department of Defense, we had no doctrinal framework for planning and improving unity of effort working with other partners in the government. So what we did was we identified the need, and that was our combatant command. So our four-star level headquarters that are spread throughout the world, they needed to have some sort of a consistent, institutionalized, and repeatable process and framework that would help them support civil authorities. So our stakeholders, when we got them all together, we had several in-person meetings and lots of collaboration to our project. They came up with 12 inhibitors. I'm not going to go through all 12. You can all look at those 12, and I think you can see that those really apply to all organizations when you're trying to make people work together. I'm sure it applies to the government of Canada. We've talked the last couple of days with a couple of people, with Victor and some others, and you know, these are really common problems. They're common inhibitors to having people come together and having organizations come together. So those were kind of our focus point on what we were looking to address and how we're going to fix things. So our way of working is we took and we started to make the conceptual approach. We started putting context to it, and we had several versions of this. This went back and forth. We had squares, we had triangles, we had cubes, we had ovals. We tried everything to sort of put it into context. But what we had something unique. We had a unifying strategy from the president that for the project we were working on said, here's a list of things that government-wide we're all going to do. So it sort of gave us the foundation of our policy or our strategy. If you're working with multiple organizations that don't have a unifying strategy or a directive strategy, you may have to apply different things, and we'll go over that in a minute. So we said we were starting with our stakeholders, we were doing our identification, we were going to find out who we were going to work with, find out where we had some commonalities, took the higher level guidance, and there were multiple pieces of guidance, but we had to do some analysis on it. Then we were trying to get to, what we came to was common objectives, looking over common environments, and using common categories of effort. How are we applying things in those environments against those objectives? Now, that may not always be the case, and we'll talk about that in a minute. That was our stage 2. Our stage 3, we were looking for key intersections or lead and supporting efforts, and then we had our stage 4 where we were looking for the detailed deep dive information. So then we went into our modeling, and we had our time difference in the stages there. This was what we actually came through, and we started putting the details and the meat on the bone of what we were trying to do here. And so again, we broke it down. We had our various stages, and where we initiated the project, we were trying to get to a common view, common understanding, and then common measures of progress and coordination plans. Synchronization, where we can come together on things. Now, our way of implementing, we developed a solution guide, which was really a how-to or unity of effort for dummies. And what was key with this is we spent a lot of time organizationally within the team in Department of Defense wrestling back and forth on the releasability of the framework. And probably the biggest success we had on this was Ms. Winters who was our project lead, coming to the decision to make it public releasable. So when we made it public releasable, that made it available for Canada to use, UK to use, South Africa to use. Anybody in here could use it because we made it open. It was a common standard, and we made it open to everybody. So that's how Mark got a hold of it, was because it was able to be public releasable, he could see it. Other than that, it would have been another stovepipe within the Department of Defense and probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. So, that was one of our great successes, is actually taking the leap and changing our normal methodology of making it releasable to the general public. We had common templates that we made that allowed us to have a repeatable process. We had checklists for the various stages. We had our own process flows and architectures that we had on there. And then we also developed a online 3-hour course that's all automated and pre-tested, the whole kind of things that are available to the public or government organizations, that really was pretty effective for us. This was what we call our dashboard. Those of us that have been through training for the last week have learned there's a different version of the dashboard, something that's live in real time. And so within this dashboard, let's see, where's the laser pointer?
Top one.
Top one? Which top?
That one.
That one? Okay. So within our stages, and we've got this all macro enabled, and it's an Excel database, and it is very functional. But we only had 10 minutes. So I'm just going to go over a couple of real quick things. In our first stage, we had our unifying strategy. That gave us direction and allowed us to figure out which stakeholders to invite. Once we did that, it brought us down into our next stage where we were trying to get to the 3 things that we were working off at the time, which were common objectives, categories of effort, what we were going to apply against those objectives, and then common operating environments. Now, we've talked with Mark, and we've talked with the rest of the practicing community so far that we've been working with, and they've done a lot of other things because we may not have common objectives. But they've done a quick scan and doing some other work on this, and they've come up with some other ways that may require alignment. You may not have common objectives, but you have common competencies or processes. You may have data commonality. You may have, you can see the various media. You've got channel competencies. You've got common infrastructure. All these are potentials to come together and actually have savings or efficiencies or just unity within your various organizations. And as you start moving through and doing the analysis, and the maturity model starts to improve, and all the rest of the pieces that the actual community is working to help develop for us, that we're going to then turn around and reapply in another phase, there's great goodness across the board. And there's probably more than this, but this was just a quick scan that they ran so far. So, Mark, that's the end of my presentation. This is what we have as our starting point. Anybody who needs to talk deeper or further will be available. We're going to continue to work with them over the long term, and there'll be various points of contact for us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Now the good news is we have already, and the process in government organizations is quite heavy to get such. We have already agreed on that this will be public for our community, can be used. We're already agreeing on some of the just modifications that it's used. I mean, for governments, it's usable. Obviously, for other governments, they would add points. But for the private sector, we already added, which you see some of those questions. Now, this is really a big step. The contact points, you know, many of our reference contents will still have the very people who developed it. The contact points will be the, in this case, the US government, the DoD, and the various persons, and we have already identified who that will be. So just for you as a community, this is a starting point of a journey that is really, really good. It adds a perspective. We all agreed we need. We are practitioners doing things in enterprise architecture and service modeling in BPM, etc., etc. We were missing an aspect of how does this go with the executive layers? How does this go with alignment? This is really good. This also breaks a new chapter, including with the aspects of the innovation and transformation that Henrik will present tomorrow. I believe it lifts the community up to add new perspectives to it. So if I could get some of the people involved into this, we get here in the start, we can take a picture, and Henrik, if you can get it. Now we have, I speak up a little bit louder. We have, in this case, our Global University Alliance, which is actually signed by myself, Professor Chris Starr, and Professor Simon, who's actually in the Global University Alliance. Professor Simon is over here. You can also join. We have Chris and Victor. Chris, if we have, and then we have from the leading practice community, we have the Senior Director General in the Government of Canada, now running the parts of the border services, as well as Henk Kuil, the lead enterprise architect of KLM, AirFrance. So they represent the part of the leading practice. We would like to give you both the award for the U.S. Department of Defense with the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the Department of State.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very nice to meet you. Yes.
Okay, we say thank you for the things. Should we have? Okay.
Yeah.
One picture. Together.
Yeah, if you can squeeze just a little bit.
Victor, come on, you're I don't want to be part.
All right, 1, 2, 3. One more, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Now you can hear a really exciting presentation, because before you saw the presentation from Saxophone, which is where you take the reference content and you take it as an organization. When an executive decides on how he takes the reference content and he applies it. Now you're going to hear from Bas Bach, our co-chairman, who's the chief architect, lead architect at NSA Rail, how you apply the reference content when you are a single Jedi fighter. How you align it in the organization who has different way of thinking, different way of how you as a single Jedi fighter actually align the different teams within. So from my point of view, it's quite important that you see there's two different perspectives. One of them is that you have an executive that takes a decision and then you apply it. The other one is that you are a single fighter and that you use the content to really support the organization with it. Let me just get the presentation ready for you.
be me, but I'm not seeing, let's say, the same picture over here as I see on the screen. And yeah, I think we need to switch something.
So the video is on YouTube, and it will say
There you go.
Here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad and proud to be here. First of all, I do apologize a little bit for my voice, but this is because I had a rough time last week. Because in Holland, we used to celebrate Carnival. Anybody is yeah, well known Carnival. I can promise you it takes big effort on my health and everything else. So I hope I can remember what I was going to tell over here. Mark already said, would you like to have a Coke? And I said, I was a little bit, let's say, in shock because I come from Amsterdam. What we normally do in Amsterdam, we grow our own mushrooms and make tea of it. Not Coke. But anyway.
I was talking about Diet Coke.
Yeah, that's what he always tells me.
Okay.
I should be on a diet. But it's something else. Okay, first of all, let me introduce me briefly. I'm Bas Bach. I work for the Dutch Railways, that's already stated by Henk. And I have an official role which is more or less architect. But I tend to operate, let's say, in all kinds and different roles. And at the very moment, we are starting up, let's say, a new project. And this new project is about replacing the back office, which is about check-ins and check-outs for our traveling, for our travelers. Okay, but this I'm going to explain a little bit more in a minute, I hope. So what's happened with the NS? Dutch Railways has changed their view on how to go about with customers. Let's say, first of all, we were thinking to them in a very silent and in a silent way, which was not setting their needs centralized. And because we are changing in Holland the way we operate the railway, we have multiple operators running around our railway. We had to change something about doing our business. Otherwise, we would be out of business. Can be. Our main shareholder, and may God be with them, is our politics, and they have, let's say, more than 95% of our shares. So as long as we have this politics believing in us, we are safe. I believe, in my humble opinion. Okay, let's go a little bit further. So to draw a little bit of the situation where we are as an NS organization. The NS organization at this very moment is still facing the problems which they had when they were implementing legacy. And legacy applications, they tend to have the way the NS implemented a silent view towards how products should be delivered towards the customers, etc. And they tend to now go a little bit more about having business services in place. Because if you have business services in place, like Gary already mentioned, I don't know if everybody was around here when Gary was doing his presentation, then you can make, let's say, more or less commodities. And if you have commodities, there's a big operational plus from cutting costs in it. The problem we have at NS is that the way our senior management looks at us is in matters of business cases. So if there is no business case for a functional change, we won't do it. But it's not always necessary to have, let's say, a business case to do a functional change. If I would say I would change my master data management, it seems very technical. And there's no business case in it, so we won't do it. But on the other hand, let's say if we go back 10 years ago, everybody believed that if we could identify a person by his name, address, email, telephone number, that would be enough. But now, because we had introduced the electronic way of traveling via a chip card, we have a much more easy way to identify them, namely by the engraved ID number on their card. And if you don't incorporate this inside your master data management, in the long run you will have a problem, because you want to diversify your customers on which channels they are traveling, what they are doing, etc., etc. So we have a gap between our business model and our ICT model, because I think if you have alignment between what the business is doing and if you have, let's say, the common sense inside ICT, what the business vision is versus what you are doing in ICT, then you're not optimizing the wrong things. If you're optimizing and specializing commodities, like Ariel already said, your operational cost will go up instead of going down. So if you have alignment between the business model and your ICT model, you have the counterparts in place, you know where the business will go. And as an architect, this is really nice, because that's the way you build your house. It's not you build your house 1 floor by 1, but you look a little bit further than that. What do I want to achieve with my house? What do I want to achieve with my architecture? Another problem we are facing, and this is all the bad news, I will go a little bit further in my presentation. It's only the first slide, I have 29 to go. So please, if everybody keep awake, if not, I will make you awake again. But anyway, the maturity we are facing inside our organization is really an issue. So there's not a high maturity, but the CIO, he wants to centralize our ICT. And if you want centralization, you have to make movement inside your operation model. You have to move to unification and have a distinct understanding between what is your core competitive differentiation and what is your commodity. That's another one. And this I always, this is when my heart always starts to bleed, if I have to admit that almost 70% of the ICT projects being carried out by ICT are not satisfying the management. This, I believe, at least for us in Holland is the case, but I think this is the case as well worldwide. So we're doing something wrong. If I look at NS, I'll explain it in a bit. Okay. Oh, this is going very fast. Lack of ownership. This is really a true pitfall in your organization. If you have lack of ownership, nobody is feeling responsible for a certain business service. Who's going to govern it, and who's going to innovate it? I think there's a bit of a problem. So all these things together have to be managed if you want to deliver, like I said in the first slide, if you want to deliver value inside your project. But still, what do we do? Our primary process is about transporting people. We do 70 million kilometers inside Holland. Now, I don't know if anybody of you has been in Holland, but if you want to do 70 million kilometers inside Holland, you go crazy. And you have to make more than 1,000 rounds in Holland before even you get to 10% of this. And inside this, we have 90.6% we are in time. And this is quite good if you compare to the rest of Europe. If you look at other public transport operators, this is quite a good figure. So from this side, we're safe. We have a turnover of 4.6 billion euros, and this is 2 million of euros, which has been realized by customers traveling. And the side effect of this is because we have so many travelers, 1.5 million travel movements a day. We have lots of people traveling through our stations and buying stuff on the railway stations. Here comes the 700 million. Okay, we have 1.6 of Abellio because we think in European style, Abellio is situated inside the United Kingdom. So in this perspective, there's still not a real financial impulse for us to change. And this is the bad news from architectural point of view. Because if there's not, if pain is not being felt, what's the need for change? There's not a real need for change. And on the other hand, we are introducing, because of the politics, we had to introduce the way we travel right now via the chip card. We had to, our business is really changing rapidly, because before we had products being printed out on paper, and now we have products which are an electronic representation of the same product which was before on paper, but even more, because you can do more with the product right now. Because they are electronic, you can get them from any point at the station. This changes also the view from the business towards our customer. Like I said at the bottom, the mind shift needed paper to electronic is a little bit too slow. Okay. If you look, let's say, at what business normally do, they tend to have two types of projects. They are or situated around innovation, or they are situated around transformation. And sometimes they are a little bit both. I see Henrik pinched the wrong sheet, but there should be on top of it that we do here integration, A-to-A, transformation and innovation. That's what businesses are looking for. They look and they want to do this in an agile, flexible, time to market, reuse, cost reduction, standardization, agility, integration. These are, let's say, more or less the things why we do projects. We want to transform, make it more cost effective, or we want to innovate. We want to create ourselves a blue ocean, which Apple did for themselves by introducing the two techniques. Like on one side you sell your products, and on the other side you have your device in which you have your products, let's say, deployed. As before, you see, and then this morning already mentioned, we have the meta objects. These are, let's say, more or less the definition of why we have, why we want to move. You have on the left side, you have, let's say, the problem chain, which is more or less representing the transformation of the business, where you want to reduce the cost, be more effective, so search more for commodities, etc., etc. And on the right side, there are your business opportunities. Opportunities to innovate your business model, or to innovate another way of thinking, or another way of doing, deploying your business service. So, more or less, this is more or less the same picture, only a little bit pointed from another point of view. You have a vision which results in a strategy. The strategy always has goals applied to it. And these goals, they are realized by competencies. This is on the value side. The same, you have competencies are realized by services. And services, they touch always objects, whether they are business objects, data objects, whatever. They always touch objects. And on the performance side, you have roles which are connected to the competences, the objects which are touched by the processes. You have the measures and the data which are there to make the KPIs and PPIs visible towards the reporting need. Here's what the business is. This is what ICT is trying to get. And you see, if you don't have, let's say, in my opinion, a real good connection between business and ICT, then you for sure will do something wrong. You will optimize on the wrong meta objects, or you will optimize on the wrong processes. So, in my humble opinion, there should be a good match between business model and ICT model. This is more or less the same. This is the way I look upon it. This is just an example of how you could organize a business model. Already also presented by Gary, also presented this morning by the other presenters. You have a business model which is about strategic, tactical, and operational. On the strategy, you have applied the vision. On the tactical, you do you make the change between strategy and the operational services at the end by themselves. But what if this is not all in place? Projects are always have this triangle of scope, money, and time. And in the middle there's quality, which is always in the middle of the squeeze. Because if time it gets a little bit shorter, quality will be under stress, and the quality will go down. Or if you change the scope, exactly the same. So this triangle is always true, and this triangle should be managed if you do projects right. If you don't manage it, you will be part of the 70% of the not really well perceived projects by the management. Now, what has Lee to do with this? When I was starting, I took the class with Mark by 2010, excuse me. By the way, if I speak a little bit strange, that's because I speak every now and then a little bit of double Dutch. So don't be afraid. If you don't understand, please raise your hand and I'll explain it in another way. I can speak also a little bit French, so if anyone is stupid, I can do it in French. Here is where Lee comes in. In 2010, I took the class with Mark. I still want my money back, but he's he's not here now. Go
You take all the shots you want.
You can take all the shots I want.
It's being recorded.
It's being recorded, yes, it can be used against me, I know. Okay. No, but still, just to explain how big fun it always was to work with Mark and said, but I think that this will go for everyone who's in this meeting right here. So it's just to make some funny notes, because it's at the end of the day, and I know it's quite a long day, but still. The value of thinking. If we introduce this, let's say, in the way we try to organize our projects, then there might be some chance, not by explaining this to our top management or whatsoever, that I can induce this way of thinking inside how I do my projects. So this way, I'm not trying to convince my management about my right or my wrong or whatsoever, but I just use it as a vehicle. I want to use lead as a vehicle in order to have this little object rightly in place. That's why I use lead. How do we do things at NS? What did we? It's not true to say invent, but what did we use? In 2009, this is a little bit of a story. We promised our politics that we, by the end of the year, we were able to have the first electronic products ready for customers to use. And at the beginning of 2009, we were not able to do nothing. I would say a rather dirty word, but it's being recorded, so I don't know. So we had to come up with some kind of trick, some kind of solution towards it. So what did we do? We said, okay, if we are able to use, let's say, Agile Scrum, is anybody, yes? Yes, that's okay, good.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. We introduced Agile Scrum. Why did we do this? Because it has the ability in it to cope with change in scope. And it has the ability in it to go about, let's say, project budgets. Instead of having the waterfall way, like you have almost written out in lines of code what you are going to do, and you have up to 99% penny-wise the budget round, here you say, okay, we have to do this. This is in our innovative innovation path, and we must be able to deliver this kind of functionality. So here is the money. Here is the way we want to deliver our services. Please realize it, but be sure to inform us. So this way, we have vision. We have more or less our enterprise architecture, which was underneath it. We have a 5-layer model, which says something about the data components, about the integration layer, about the orchestration layer. But this is another presentation, and on top of that, the presentation toward the customers. But this is the way we are technically organized. Here, this is the way we are project-wise organized. So we define a real some subset of functionality, very well defined, which we are going to deliver. Why this is called Sudoku? Sudoku is a popular game in Holland, and is always let's say being abused by elderly people, and we like to laugh about it. So But this is the way by making points. Some projects do always projects in function points. We do them in Agile Scrum points. And whether they are this big or this big, I don't mind. Because over time, you will see that the burn rate from different teams is changing, whether it's in functional points or whether it's in business Scrum point. But it gives an ability to feel how much work should be done to deliver a certain type of functionality. Okay, more or less the same. What we do, we have high-level business requirements, which is the HLBR. There we have the project start architecture. I apologize for being some sheets for being in Dutch because I also presented around our management team. And we have additional specifications. What we do over here, I'll speed up just a little bit because I think this is most important. At this point, we have an agreement between our business and our project. This means that they are committed to the services we are going to deliver. But this is one thing. Like, please try to remember, like I stated in the second sheet, that we have lack of ownership. So this is what we have to go about. Now, we have defined, let's say, a certain state of it. When is it ready? And when is the definition of done? You can read for yourself, but when it's ready to be, let's say, developed by our team. This means that the vision and the strategy and the tactics are well defined by the business, and they are also understood by the project team. The definition of done is when everything is tested, etc., etc. Whether it's integration testing or user acceptance testing. I try to be as fast as possible. Now, this is more or less the main takeaway I would like to give in this presentation. Because what we did, we used Enterprise Architect as a tool from Spark. So are you familiar with Enterprise Architect from Spark? Yes. Okay. And why do we use it? Because it has a very low footprint, at least on budget. It almost costs nothing. And by convincing management that you can do wonderful things with not costing anything, they really love it. At least I saw them to be very, very happy with this way of thinking. And what we did inside them is the Agile Scrum, how you call it, the products. We manage them inside Enterprise Architect, on which on top we have the map, the matrices, and the model taken from our lead program, in which we define the meta objects being applied inside the project. So we also have the high-level business requirement attached to the models. And we have the models are being composed during the Agile Scrum sessions. So at the very lowest, here you have, let's say, what we call our elementary business processes. We have there, on top we have the chronological business process, and on top we have the tactics and the strategy being realized by the project. By achieving this, and having spread out this, as I speak right now, on more than 4 organizational units, we are reducing costs because there's a real cost optimization in it. Because think of it in this way: if we agree upon a common way of modeling, this means all the projects, the way they do things is becoming a commodity. So we can optimize it in this way. We can cut down the development costs. Now, if I look at this, what would happen if I make the difference between consultancy and an operation? More or less, what we see, if a project is being carried out by a consultancy, they will bring in their own skills, their own methodologies, their own way of documenting things. What this will do to the operation, the time to live from a consultancy is like this, but from an operation is more like than this. So, what will happen if you do any upgrade on service process? You have to reinvent, re-engineer what the project has delivered. And this costs an awful lot of money. We had this at hand at the Dutch Railways only 2 months ago. A really big project was delivered again. It was delivered again by a great consultancy company, so I'm not going to mention their names. But they delivered a book like this on the day that it was productive. They threw it at our desk with a really great, big smile, and they were drinking champagne and everybody was laughing. But the next day we had to do optimizations on this model. How could we do this? So we had to re-engineer this big book, which was already not complying to the truth anymore. So here is your cost effectiveness by introducing this way of modeling. Not this way, but agreeing on the way of modeling. So by agreeing on the way of modeling, you cut down your operational costs and your development costs. So this is more or less the biggest takeaway we have. And in there, of course, if you the way we model, we have services as the facilitators for our business. Okay. And this comes from the lead way of thinking, because if you look here at lead, you see the same. When I was looking at this picture, I was always wondering myself, why the hell should sorry. I did it again. Why should I use, let's say, this kind of modeling technique? And then I was thinking about way back by the introduction of the compact disk. Why on earth would you need the Z transformation? It's really difficult to understand, but it's so very easy to calculate with, compute with. So if you have a lead way of thinking towards your organization, it's easy to do the computations on where you want to have to change, where you have your competitiveness, where you have your operational excellence. And by optimizing this, you are more flexible and more easily striving towards your goal. And this is also why I was not trying to let's say to argument with my management, because I only have the chance to stay with them inside the elevator. In 30 seconds I cannot explain this. But I can explain to them that I am able to deliver their value in their projects in an easy way, because I did already for 3 or 4 projects for them. So, you see, this is let's say more the specialization towards the servers. Exactly, and here are all the objects around it, which you need. But of course, they are all, I think, majorly already explained beside the various sessions. So this is what we have to work on. We have to work on our business model. Business model is not in place yet, but I try to come over with it by, I missed one thing, this is very important. If I want to have the lack of ownership, if I want to have this managed, how do I do this? I do this by applying by making. Are you familiar with what a huddle is? In a huddle, you come together, and in this huddle, you explain what you're trying to do. And this we did towards all the different business units which are involved in the project. So if we have anything to do with finance, we introduced the huddle with finance, with candidates who have mandate to say yes or no, to go further or to step back or to adapt the new functionality. So by introducing these huddles, I overcome, let's say, the immaturity of the organization and the lack of ownership. Because in this way, I could create a perception of my project. And I think if a project is perceived well, then you get, let's say, management which is really glad that you did the project, and also by their constraints and by their needs. So by managing my stakeholders, my stakeholder management, I introduced and overcome the lack of ownership, and was able to deliver the functionality so sought for. Okay. This is the same as is the way how to go about business service modeling, and it is I think it's, in my opinion, I like it really much because this helps arrange my own way of thinking. You see, I'm a little bit always from left to right, a little bit jumpy, but that's the nature of the person. So what we did, we introduced modeling with implicit architecture. Like I stated before, we introduced the leading principles without arguing with them. So if we're going to model in this way, which had the architectural principles from LEED in it under the hood, then we were able to deliver the project. Okay. So I think I'm quite at the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, then I'm open to answer them if I can.
Before we open up for questions, I just wanted to summarize some of the key learnings. I mean, like, the reason why we asked Bas to come all the way up from Europe over here is because there are two types of elements how our reference content is being used. Either you take an executive decision, and somebody like Michael Monk, or they just say, this is reference content, of course, we need to build our stuff based on reference content. And you take an executive decision and your team drives it forward. That's one element into it. If you don't have that element and you're certified within how you use the content, that's where you become a lonely soldier, a Jedi soldier. But you can still apply it within the organization. So this teaches you how you can actually, when you have a joint way of thinking and a way of modeling, how you can create that in your organization. They don't have to be all educated in LEED. They don't have to know all about it, but you are the single source that are the spine in the web that knows, okay, this is how I need to align with BPM leader. This is how I need to align with this. This is how I need to communicate with the executives. But because what happens often, a person like Bas, who is a lead architect, has no voice at executive level. But he gets things on his table he needs to execute. So he still needs to relate what he gets on his table on how he can execute the best with different teams in different silos. This is a quite important element to see how do you align a common way of thinking in across teams. So this goes to a lot of you who actually will work on projects in specific elements, and there's a lot of team members from other departments that you need to work with that don't have the same thinking. So how do you create the common way of thinking? You do that based on LEED, and there are 5 key wormholes we always have. That's the layers, that's the objects, that's the requirements, that's the transformation and innovations within it. Yes, so I mean, like that's quite important that you really have seen that example how he does it. Any questions to him?
Well, Bas, Victor, we talked on the phone, but I can't speak it. I kind of have the reverse challenge. I'm coming in from the business side, but kind of nested in an IT organization without any IT people in that organization, by the way. So that's interesting. But I'm not happy with the enterprise architecture practice in my organization. So I'm trying to use some prescriptive views of what I need, from EA to support my portfolio alignment. So, like in the context of, I think you and I would be trying to drill through the same mountain just from the 2 different sides, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's good. Now she trains for mountains, but how did you expose enterprise architecture artifacts to the business side? Like, what did you show them? What instruments did you use, like for the background work?
There's a very blunt answer to it. I always use, let's say, my ability to try to make the presentations in a way they understand. So I make some sort of dashboard for them, in which I let them see which functionality are already achieved, and this we do by two weekly demos. So this is the side project methodology, and on the other hand, I show to the management where we are. Let's say, set out towards their center date and functionality solved for. If there's a change in it, we make a scope change. But we do it by presentations and by inviting them to be around in the huddles, I've mentioned before, and by giving the 2 weekly demos what we are achieving. By continuous, let's say, trying to see if we're on the same speaking level. And I don't use really, like I said, the maps, the matrices, etc. Because they will look at the details. And when I say they, I mean this not disrespectful, because I'm very respectful towards the business. I see myself as an enabler of the business, not as somebody on the other side of the business. But I think the business has a certain competency in seeing how we go about vision and strategy. And I must be on the other side to enable the vision and strategy. But I don't want to bother them with, let's say, nitty-gritty details, which they are not interested anyway. And by the way, if I do it this way, then I won't lose their attention. If I go, okay, I have a data object over here and I want to change X, Y, Z, and somebody else, they will say, you have 10 minutes, please, Mr. Bach, see you next time, next year. But if I present to them, okay, this is the way we are progressing in your solve for functionality. And by the way, we are able to demonstrate this every 2 weeks and to make an alignment on this level. This is what they like, love. So that's my here. Okay.
Any more questions? I think that's also one of the beauties we have in our community, because we have a wide range of community members, executive level, all the way down to software testers, to analysts, to all the wide range, all using the same. That's beautiful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Around 20 minutes before we go to happy hour from iGraphics. Before that, we're going to take a picture and we have some awards we are actually giving out. I'd like to ask our co-chairman Henk to come down. Henk Kuil, he's the lead architect at KLM and AirFrance. For the ones who don't know him necessarily, he is the one many years ago who had the idea to say, you know what, we should organize that in the community. Hence, we have the leading practice as an open source community. So we often refer to him as our godfather or something like that. But he had the initial idea, and we always honor him for that. So we have some awards that we wanted to actually give out. We each year look at a lot of projects. And one intention of projects we look at a lot are transformation projects. Because there's a lot of transformation projects who fail. A lot of transformation projects fail. They're very challenging. And we have been following one project for a couple of years. And we've been reviewing 120 projects. And one project that has impressed us most is the one actually from Novozymes. And we both have Thomas here, and we also have Yes here. I'm not sure if you want to come down, because then we can actually. Somebody actually cares about you. No, so actually one of the things for you who don't know Novozymes, who of you don't know what Novozymes does? Okay. Novozymes is the leader in the market doing enzymes and bioethanol. So when you drive your car, the chance that you have 25% bioethanol in it is very high. And every food you eat, it's probably somehow mixed with some stuff which they have made. And they are, from a strategy point of view, they are in the blue ocean, and they're a very innovative company. They're constantly trying to improve themselves in all different aspects. And they had a couple of years ago, they had a big challenge in that saying, because it's a Danish company. The core product was how you produce enzymes is factory based. Thomas could probably use hours on that, but I'm just going to give you the very short version. it was too expensive to produce in Denmark. So they had the view on saying, okay, let's outsource that. That's the potential to actually do it to China. Then the chief information officer, the CEO, he actually said, you know what? Let's rethink that strategy. What would it take to keep the production in Denmark, but do it smarter and save money at the same time? And that's where they actually rethought an entire transformation project, how they could optimize and lean to actually save over a 5-year period over 100 million Danish crowns, which was the projection which they needed to actually get there. A lot of projects have an intention to save money. Very few projects save money. That's actually a real-life story that really works. Hence, we really want to award with it, because when something really works, let's look at it. So that award goes to Novozymes, and Thomas was one of the leader of the projects. Thomas Olsen. And this is a company that you will hear a lot from as well, because they're constantly pushing the forward in the different areas. Now, Thomas has moved from one area to the next area, which is supply chain management within Novozymes, you two guys. And we're very honored to actually have you here. And the US will get to know that brand easily in a couple of years. Thank you. You will hear more from Thomas tomorrow. He will actually participate in the panel. He has been driving some of the most complex projects. So hence, that's why we're looking forward to see you.
Okay, then now we have the award for the Practitioner of the Year. And we are honored to give that to Gerrit Jason. See him. And, probably all know that Gerrit is very active on our lead forum and introduces all kind of discussions and shares with us his experience and knowledge for lead. And for us, he is an example of a lead practitioner. Gerrit,
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. May I hold the speech?
Yeah.
You may hold the speech.
I have a very short one. We've been on until midnight. Don't worry. No, I just want to share my word of wisdom. And I always have the philosophy that if you're the smartest person in the room, change the room. But I realized this time I came to a room, I probably stay forever with both Einstein and Bohr in the same room. But they're nice guys, so that's okay.
Oh yes. So just some couple of words of Gerrit. So it's pronounced Gerrit and Janssen, and he's Swedish. He's been doing an extraordinary work. He's responsible for the supply chain management mainly, and he's been driving that. The people of you who wouldn't know it, he's actually also a honeyman. He's also doing honey. He has a lot of beehives and so on. But he's extraordinary on how he really pushes forward, lead on companies how to find different reference contents. He's like an octopus. Yeah. So this one is one award, and this one we want actually to get back. James, come down here. This is the award we want to get back. You can receive this one, but this one we want back. We have actually one person we call out each year to be the rising star. And this year it's James. James came new to our community. We have a community over 3,200 practitioners. He's so he's still a virgin. So he has been there 1 year, and he has been doing he's been so eager. Whatever content he received, he hasn't received enough. He wants more, he digests it, and he not only receives, he also gives back. So with him, Professor Mark van Roosingen has been extensively working on the enterprise security framework, and we have a very, very tight schedule on how our reference content is being released. We have a very, very tough value audit to really come through. And what he has been producing together with Mark has just gone through nearly like it was diarrhea. Hence, it was really, really good because we have a very, very tough audit how to come through, because within Leap, everything has to fit together from the top to the bottom. All objects have to fit together. It has to be from the way of thinking, way of working, way of implementation. Everything has to be in detail. And so hence, we have selected him from all the 3,200 practitioners to be Practitioner of the Year. This one is the award that you can take home. This one you can take home, but you have to deliver next year as well. The previous owner was the Rising Star? No. The previous owner was Professor Böhler, but he's not here in the room, hence he can't deliver. You have to deliver that back next year to the next Rising Star. This one is called the $1 Million Man. It's from Kenya. It's a lucky star. So whoever gets that, he will be our lucky star. We expect much from you.
Can I add something? Because what I find very special here is that Thomas James, I'm very bad in names, sorry for that. James is a very good example of what our group is able to do. So the fact that he has started Lead 7 months ago, and then in 7 months' time reaches this award. This is an applause.
So at the same time, I challenge each of you, whoever wants to step up, take ownership, this is the community where you can take ownership. Thomas, if you want to take ownership in supply chain management, step up. If you want to take ownership in anything, step up. This is the community where you can step up in. I realize not a lot of you can do it because you're very busy in your work, but if this is your passion and you want to go to the frontier, you want to push it, this is the community where you can do it. This is where the weirdos are recognized. And the next one, by the way, is not a weirdo.
Nerds.
This is the last innovation award, and that is for Victor, as you can see, Victor Abel. He is Innovator of the Year, and he's also a board member. And congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I should say one thing that Victor, before you come with speech, one thing that Victor brings to our community is that our community originally, many, many years ago, started, and it started from the enterprise architecture point of view, and from BPM point of view. So it started very heavy from a practitioner point of view. And the last couple of years, we have we have a very strong executive profile. Victor has taken over the role as chairman, and Victor is, from our perspective, extremely innovative. I mean, like, if you just look on our webpage on the custom and border control and see some of the detailed content that is there, his view on what he brings along, how he interconnects the world, how he sees things should be done, he's always pushing things one step ahead. there are a few executives around that really capture the vision, the paradigm shift, and are willing to push it forward, that are willing to challenge it one step ahead, and that are always, if they see something doesn't work, say, okay, how can I do this better? How can I do an alignment framework? That anything that comes within it. He's working in one of the most challenging environments of all, customer border control. And he thinks constantly how he can improve that. Hence, that's where he gets the innovation.
Well, thank you, Henrik. I guess that's it's a very humbling kind of testament. I know that it really goes back to what Gary and I started to do together, and it was Gary that brought a lot of that thinking to me, with Mark and so on. And now I'm having a chance to apply it in a very challenging environment. But primarily, it's challenging because it's chaos. I've been trying to create order from chaos, and I certainly have found that the lead framework allows me to at least have a way to think about it that's not chaotic, although the chaos continues, and that's the battle that I'm in. So, like many of you. So, but thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Step forward. Yeah, your head's going to get light on.
Victor, you're okay.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
So now we're going to take a picture
Yes.
of the entire group. We're actually just missing a couple of people. Professor Kuil.